This is Python's Paradise. This is your host, Greg Gilbert, aka the Python Hyena, straight out of Fredericton, New Brunswick, Canada. And here we are, January the 24th, 2022. Freezing cold out there, but my guest has a hat on his head, so I'm wondering how cold it is where he is.
I don't know if it's. Well, let me see. I'll look it up. Hold on.
I don't know how cold it
It's
is.
21. It's 21 degrees Fahrenheit outside.
Mm-hmm.
In the house, it's warm-ish, but this is a drafty house, and I'm an old guy.
Yeah.
So my hands are. I don't know why, but my hands are always cold, even in the house during the wintertime. I think maybe I should move to South America or something. But anyway,
Well,
I'm doing fine. How
old
cold is it where
guy,
you are?
old guy, you classifying 39 as old?
Ah, right.
I don't know how cold it is where I am. I got my car started last night, but the last few days I've had a hard time getting it started. And I think because I just got the car last year, so
Yeah.
yeah, so I think it's because of the cold. Yeah, but nonetheless, it was interesting when we were going back and forth planning this because when I mentioned I was an hour ahead of you. You said you're in Atlantic, and yeah, Atlantic Canada. I never heard that from anybody before. Most people don't know where we are here.
Yeah, well, I mean, I was in the Atlantic time zone once, and
Mm-hmm.
before I was there, I didn't know there was such a thing. But I went up and played something called the Loyalist City Folk Festival, and
Mm-hmm.
now I can't remember the name of the town, but maybe then there's a town somewhere in that region that calls itself the Loyalist City, and they had a folk festival, and it was a bit disorganized actually, but I met a lot of nice people, and it was then that I learned of the existence of the Atlantic time zone. So
Yeah,
there
a
you
lot
go.
of people don't even know we exist here. I interviewed
Yeah, yeah,
somebody from Florida last year, and she was like, there's a time zone ahead of us. I'm like, yeah,
yeah. How about
us.
that?
We're like that lost place on Earth. Nobody knows where we are.
Yeah. Well, I've been
Yeah.
there, so you know.
I'm under the impression when they used to announce the Ultimate Warrior in wrestling as from being from parts unknown. He must have been from here. He
There you
must have
go.
been. He must have been because nobody knows where here is. So parts unknown.
There you go.
You know what? Before we get into your background, I discovered something. I was reading up on you last night and I discovered something about you I didn't know, and I have to delightfully bring it up right now. You wrote the title song for Walk Hard, the Dewey Cox Story.
I did
I
exactly.
I love that movie.
Oh, good, good. Yeah, it's a real cult favorite, and I wrote the theme song. I wrote it while I just popped into my head almost while I was watching my daughter on horseback. She was in grade school.
Uh-huh.
She was able to go and take horseback riding lessons at a place down the road from us, and I was just standing there watching her ride around, and it was like the easiest song I ever wrote in my life. Like I didn't even really write it; it just appeared in my mind suddenly. I love it when that happens.
Well, you know what? I went to the theater and saw that movie, and it was so brilliant because I'd never seen uh a movie done like that. They created their own character, John C. Riley playing Dewey Cox brilliantly, and they went through all these tropes that happen in a lot of these uh documentaries about musicians and whatnot, and
Yeah,
they just took them and um, satired them so well. And I
yeah,
got the soundtrack, and I've interviewed Chip Hermaz, excuse me, who played Nate from the film.
Oh.
who got halved at the beginning of it.
Oh my God. Yeah. I read that scene in the script and I just thought, oh, this is going to be a smash.
Yep.
When they cut the guy in half, I thought, oh, what this, nothing can go wrong with this. This is guaranteed comedy
Yeah.
gold right here.
Oh yeah. I had that kid on who's now an adult and doing well. And yeah, I Walk Hard is one of those films that I'm glad I saw in the theater. I still have a good laugh at it. I got the soundtrack album and I was like, wow, you wrote that song, Walk Hard, and a great song. And yeah, I had to bring that up because I I was tickled when I read that last night.
Yeah. I mean, I tried to somehow make it a hybrid of Johnny Cash and Roy Orbison and a little bit of this, a little bit of that, because that's what they were doing. They were kind of making a pastiche out of all these different elements, but it was like a satire of, I guess, just before Walk Hard, there was the I Walk the Line one. There were like three or
Yeah,
four
Ray.
Hollywood music biographies, and they all kind of seem to be the same movie over and over again. So Walk Hard decided to go after all of that, and I liked it too. I thought it was funny.
Love it. I have it here on Blu-ray. Love the movie. So I had to bring that up right away because I know
Yeah.
we were talking about Peggy Sue Got Married. And I was looking you up last night. It's like, Walk Hard. I've got to bring that up. I have so
Hmm.
much fun with that movie. I love that movie. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah. And it's celebrating its 15th anniversary this year. Come out in 2007. Where does the time go?
Oh, that's a good question.
Oh
15
my
years ago. Okay.
goodness.
Wow.
15 years. Where does the time go?
Well, and now everything happened a long time ago, I
Yeah,
guess. Uh,
yeah. Well, I was reading up on you, and one of the things that really caught me, like I was never able to learn an instrument growing up, and maybe it just wasn't my thing. But you started playing guitar at age 10?
yeah, I was interested in it before then, and I had a guitar.
Mm-hmm.
I got one when I was 6,
Mm-hmm.
and but I didn't start playing it until an older cousin of mine started playing, and that just kind of motivated me. I guess I wanted to hang around with him, or it was like an alpha dog competition thing or whatever it was. But anyhow, my cousin started playing, so I started playing. But it was always like in me to want to do it, and finally I did it when I was started trying to do it when I was 10, like you said. And I had piano lessons at the same time beginning just then. So that was when I really started trying to learn something and how to play something. But I thought about it before then. I wanted to do it always, almost.
Is guitar your favorite instrument to play?
It's the one I play. I mean, I also am a kind of a wannabe drummer,
Mm-hmm.
and so I guess it's those two. If I had if I had it to do over again, I would be a jazz drummer. But anyway, I'm a rock musician, rock and roll guitar player, and singer and songwriter
Oh, wow.
primarily.
Yeah. And of course, your brother played drums and you had him in your band for a while.
Yeah, and it was kind of a natural thing with him. He just started keeping time behind me. When he's 5 years younger than I am,
Uh-huh.
and but it was a musical household. Everybody in the household was just really plugged into music and interested in it, and yeah, we worked together for a few years. He's on my first 2 albums, and then on my 4th album, and then we toured together for a long time too. My brother.
You must have been very close with your brother to be able to engage with him in something that went from a hobby to being a profession.
Yeah, and we still are friends. You know, we were
Mhm.
never like you read about brothers in rock bands who, I guess the most extreme example are like 2 guys in Oasis who, you know, are completely at odds right now. My brother Robert and I are friends and always have been, uh, which is cool.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, we went through a lot together. I mean, before we got out in the world and started making records and touring and nationally and all that business, you know, we were in a bar band together.
Uh-huh.
In fact, he got me into this band, and it was the first time in my life that I'd ever like made a steady living playing in a rock and roll band. And by the way, that's the only thing that I've ever been able to do where I could earn a living, you know. But anyway, it was a band that my brother was in already, and we used to play in these, you know, dives and with all these kind of Looney Tunes people out there in the audience, and he and I would just be up on stage and laughing at the whole thing. It was like a big private joke between us, and we actually loved that life, the bar band life, and we just sort of took it out into the world eventually, him and I. When I started out, just that connection with him and me, it was really a core thing, you know, for what I was doing, honestly. His energy and just having him as an ally and having him close by, that was really a great thing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, who were your musical influences growing up?
Well, it's like kind of a wide range. You know, I'm 68 years old, and I grew up with the top 40 radio
Mm-hmm.
of the 50s and 60s. And, you know, it was always really eclectic, mostly rock and roll, but, you know, like diverse offering, you know, different genres and stuff like that. And then when I got into my teen years and there was FM rock radio, then initially that was really diverse. It changed right away. FM rock radio became really tightly formatted within a short time. But when it first started out, it was everything under the sun, everything from, you know, Jimi Hendrix to Igor Stravinsky and country music and blues and all over the map. And but anyhow, I guess I should narrow it down and say that my influences mostly just a cross section of rock and roll from the 50s and 60s. That's what I really fell in love with, and that was what I could play too, and that's what really resonated with me. I mean, I did love Buddy Holly when I was a child. I saw him on the Ed Sullivan Show. I heard him on the radio when he was still alive. I picked up on his stuff, loved it. Lots of stuff I've been influenced by.
Yeah, you
Uh,
get compared to Buddy Holly a lot. You play him in La Bamba.
I know, yeah, I did. It's true. Yeah, that was a thing that people picked up on right away. Partly it's the glasses and the Fender Stratocaster, but it actually does get more kind of real beyond that, because I heard that music as a child, and yeah.
Yeah, you didn't get to play Buddy Holly and Walk Hard. Frankie Muniz got that.
Oh yeah, who was Buddy Holly and Walk Hard?
Frankie Muniz.
Oh, I don't know that name. And I remember Jack White was Elvis Presley, right? And that was funny. That was kind of borderline, but Anyway, yeah. No, you know what? When I did the La Bamba premiere party, which is parts of it are on YouTube. You can see us up there on stage. But
Hmm.
I mean, it's hard to believe, but it's true. When I was on stage playing, I could see Gary Busey right in front of me, and he was like watching me. And I'm like, so that's the other guy. He was in the Buddy Holly story. Did a great job. That he carried that whole movie. I just happened to be in La Bamba for the few minutes I was in it, but it was funny just that it happened to be him sitting in front of me watching, that I could focus on him and see that he was watching me. But anyway, yeah, I love doing that. I love the fact that I did it.
Yeah.
Lucky for me.
Well, you're of course, Peggy Sue Got Married came out in 1986. So it we're a little past that 35th anniversary part, but when I look at that film, I'm like, Francis Ford Coppola was he was a huge director in the 70s. Not that he wasn't in the 80s, but in the 70s, he made some pretty massive films. Like he made The Godfather parts 1 and 2, made the what I call the very underrated Gene Hackman film, The Conversation, and he
That's a
made
good
my
one.
oh yeah, and he made my favorite war movie, Apocalypse Now. And
Yeah,
I think
yeah.
Apocalypse Now was so stressful for him. I think he got involved in excuse me, smaller projects in the 80s, like The Outsiders and Peggy Sue Got Married, films that were very notable, but I think they were less a headache to make.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It was, maybe at that time he was kind of grabbing a paycheck, you could say, but I mean, the movie is very artfully done, and I remember just the care and the sense of detail that he brought to the whole thing. Uh, so he was, but with Apocalypse Now and some of those, I mean, he really took the whole financial risk himself, I think, to make some of those movies. And so by the time he did Peggy Sue Got Married, I think he was just trying to get back on his feet, and that it wasn't as personal a project for him. But he made it personal in this way: he brought his nephew into the movie to be one of the co-stars,
Yeah,
Nicolas
Nicolas
Cage,
Cage.
and that was his first, and maybe not his first, but it was like a real big responsibility for him. Like he'd never had that big of a role in a film before. And I remember watching him do his scenes and just thinking, what the hell is this guy doing? Because he acted really crazy in that movie. It was just supposed to be this kind of white bread character, but he did it with this sort of like, he made it absurd and like turned it into his own little private joke. And
Hmm.
I thought he's ruining the movie, but then I saw the movie and saw it again and then again, and after a while it got to be like the only thing I liked in the movie was Nicolas Cage doing that funny character of his. But anyway, it was interesting. That was my first time on a movie set, and to just watch a movie being made like that up close, it was great. It was really something.
Well, to be the first time on a movie set and it being for Francis Ford Coppola, that's not a bad thing.
No, you're right. It was really remarkable. And we were
Yeah.
on the set. We had to be on the set the whole week too, even though even just in case we were needed while they shot that scene. And so
Hmm.
there were days when we didn't do anything, but we just hung around, and it was great. I loved it.
Yeah. Yeah. Nicolas Cage has got a really interesting following now, like like in the 80s, for example, he appeared in Fast Times at Ridgemont High. He had the one of the leads in Valley Girl, and of course Peggy Sue Got Married, and won the Oscar for Leaving Las Vegas, and
Yeah.
yeah, it was Scorsese's Bringing Out the Dead. I really liked him too. Like last year, he was in Willy's Wonderland and, and stuff like that. And
Yeah. Yeah.
he's got this ability to pick some really crazy projects, and I really like that because a lot of people kind of dig his over the top kind of persona that he delivers. People love that. So did you get any sense of that when you was watching him work?
Yeah, most
Yeah.
certainly I did. Oh, you know who else was in Peggy Sue Got Married? Was Jim Carrey.
Jim Carrey, yep.
And he was, I don't, I think that was his first film. He was doing stand up at the time, but Francis spotted him somewhere, or somebody did. And there were a couple of people. Now I can't remember so many of the names, but there were a few people in that movie. They were like really promising up and coming people at that time. And I remember Jim Carrey. He was very withdrawn, kind of not unfriendly, but he just like he really kept to himself. It was almost like he was kind of watching everybody. But anyway, that was great. It was a real memorable life experience.
Jim Carrey came out of his way in 1994. That was when he did Ace Ventura, The Mask, and one of my personal favorites, Dumb and Dumber.
Right. Well, then before
Yeah,
that, he was in Living Color. That was
yeah.
really where
Oh
people
yeah,
saw him. But anyhow,
yeah. No, you had a lot of great people in this cast, like Kathleen Turner. I mean, on her game in this movie. Did you have any interactions with her?
yeah, I did. She just I interacted with most everybody. It was like a real friendly atmosphere, like a film set. It's like they're your fam. I'm not in that world really, but I
Mhm.
was that those couple times, and it seems like those people are. It's like a family thing almost when you're all there in this isolated environment, and you're all working on the same thing. It's like a group energy thing. So we all, everybody was on that particular in that situation. Everybody was friendly. Everybody was cool. There wasn't anybody who was a prima donna or trying to make a scene or anything. I didn't see any of that.
Great cast, yes. Barry
Yeah.
Miller from Saturday Night Fever and Fame, both in. He's
Oh,
in
that
here.
guy. Yeah, he was
Yeah,
great.
yeah. I love both of those movies. Catherine Hicks in here, Joan Allen. You got a wonderful cast.
Lisa Persky,
Yeah,
Lisa
yeah,
Jane Persky.
yeah. You got a lot of uh, great cast in this movie. So fantastic. Yeah. But I do want to go back to your music because I
Oh
mean,
yeah, that. Go
well,
ahead.
you know what? Like I said, I was reading up on you, and I always like to when I interview musicians, I love to get into that mindset of what it feels like. You could almost look at this and Walk Hard, where they're both first recording that song "Walk Hard,"
Yeah.
and whether they'll make it or not, and they find, of course, 35 minutes ago, Walk Hard just played. He walks out and everybody's bombarding him. Like it
Yeah.
happens in 35 minutes, but you had a massive hit with Someday Some Way, and that was on your first album. Now, what was the feeling like when you got when making that first album? um like you got the songs all written and recorded, but what was the feeling like when you realized that you got a hit on your hand?
Well, it was. I mean, it was gratifying. of course. Um, I was I was a little I was overwhelmed, honestly. I mean, just like I thought I kind of knew something about the music business, but then to actually get in it and, you know, be just subject to the vicissitudes of it, it was like, wow. I mean, it was like I got dropped in at the deep end, kind of, you know, just trying to, a lot to wrap your mind around. Plus, you know, it's a very fast paced, very competitive business. Lots of ambitious people and driven people that are going to run right over you if you don't move fast. You know, it was wild. It was a life education. But anyway, it was beautiful. It was crazy. My favorite part of it, honestly, was before we got our record deal, when we were just like a band in New York City, starting out from square one. You know, we played this place on the Lower East Side called the Great Gildersleeves.
Okay.
And there were about 4 people in the place. And then a couple of weeks later, we played another place over on 6th Avenue called Snafu. And that time there were like 25 people in the place. And then we started to play all the other clubs around town. And by the end of this sort of short period of time, we were selling out this place called Webster Hall, which is like 1,500 seater. We just had this really quick meteoric rise in New York City, and that was so exciting, because all we did was just stick our foot out the door and get on stage, and then the next thing we knew, you know, we had all the press, and the business was interested in us, and it's just like, it was like, that part of it was like a Hollywood movie kind of. But then when we got the record out, then it was like, I don't know. It was pretty wild. It really was. But you know, it was all great in retrospect, and you know, it was really cool.
Talk about that first time getting up on stage. You know, did you have uh, a feeling of anxiety, or was it like something that you couldn't wait to do? You were just like um,
Mm.
finally you're doing this. You're doing this in front of a whole lot of people. Talk about that first time on stage.
Well, I mean, the first time I was ever on stage, that would have been when I was maybe like 10 years old. But you know, I always liked it. You know, I always really loved it. Just I mean, maybe once in a while, or sometimes, you know, there's been some anxiety about it, but for the most part, it's like, it's exhilarating, right? And
Yeah.
the other good thing about it is, if you're really doing it right, then there's nothing else on your mind except what's there right in the moment, you know? Like, your mind is, it's like it's purifying, kind of, you know, to just be in the moment, and that's all that's happening in your mind. It's like, it's like therapy.
You know what, too? I think one of the things that really helped you was starting at such a young age. You know, by the time that you're an adult and you get on stage, it's easy peasy, except you're playing in front of more massive crowd. But
Yeah.
probably
No,
was, yeah.
yeah, I no, it was. I mean, I've always really enjoyed it.
Well, you did. Something's got to happen, and someday, some way. Uh, both in 1981, and of course, then you come out. You get your next album out Go, you had a couple of other singles on there too. Cynical Girl. Who's a cynical girl?
It's not really specifically about anyone, and
Okay.
but people always ask. But songs aren't necessarily always about specific people. Like read a quote from James Taylor a little while ago. He said that a song is really about itself, which I think is cool, because you when you're writing something, you just get this initial flash of energy and inspiration, and then you're just trying to like actualize it and turn it into a form. So that's when you write a song, you're just trying to stay true to that initial flash of inspiration, I guess. But with Cynical Girl, there's a line in it, or a verse in it, where it says, "I hate TV." I don't know if you know the words to the song, but it says, "I hate TV. There's got to be somebody other than me who's ready to write it off immediately. I'm looking for a cynical girl." And it's just about like it's like a screed against mass culture, kind of.
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying. It's like the so-called real world is largely an absurdity. That's what the song is really about. But the thing about the girl, you want to, it's a rock and roll song, so it's got to have the word girl in it, sort of.
One of my favorite songs.
I have written songs about specific people, and like, love songs that are about specific people, but Cynical Girl isn't one of them.
I was listening to a bunch of your songs last night to get in preparation for the interview, and I love the title of this one. I like the song too, but the title caught my attention. You're my favorite waste of time.
Yeah,
I love that. Where'd you come up with that?
I don't know. That's the song of mine that's probably been the most successful of all in terms of, economically. I wrote that song. The title popped into my head just thinking about, times that you might spend with somebody where you might be going like, I'm not really sure why I'm doing this, but there's something beautiful about it. I don't know if that makes sense, but I like the way you're reacting to the title. I just thought, well, that's a funny title. So then the next thing I knew, I was just kind of putting the whole thing together in my mind. When I wrote that, when I was backstage at the Stanley Theater in Pittsburgh, because Beatlemania was going to open there the next day, and I was in the touring company.
You were playing John Lennon, were you not? Yeah.
Yeah, I was, and I was one among many, but I did, and so I was backstage at the Stanley Theater, and I got this idea for a song, and I didn't even really have to write it down. It just sort of wrote itself in my mind. So when I got home from the road, I made a home recording of it on my 4-track machine. And then I put that 4-track recording on the B-side of Someday, Some Way. And the song just kind of got out into the world, like Bette Midler recorded it.
Yeah.
Put it on one of her albums, and then maybe a year after that, a guy in England recorded it, a guy named Owen Paul, and his version was a smash. It got up to, it never got to number 1. It was number 2 for like 3 weeks. I got a silver disc for it eventually, and it still is, played on the radio all over, Scandinavia and in Europe, England. So that's, like, I just wish I had 20 more like that one. It's just like a perennial hit song. Just a little tune that I made up in my head, and somehow it got out into the world like that. It's amazing.
We touched upon Beatlemania. What was it? Because I was born in 1972, so Beatlemania was completely absent from me, but you lived through it. Talk about that time and how big the Beatles were back in the 60s.
Yeah, I was into rock and roll music before they came along,
Mm-hmm.
and which was unusual, amongst my peer group. But anyhow, rock and roll was great before they came along, but then when they did come along, somehow, it was really their personalities and just them as charismatic figures, and the group as like a charismatic entity, and people just really seized on it, and I did too. I just fell in love with them and their music right from the get-go. This might seem weird to you, but this is really true. This really happened to me when
Uh-huh.
I heard them on the radio and really loved the record. And then I saw them on the Ed Sullivan Show. They've been on a show before then called the Jack Parr Show, but I was in the hospital getting an appendectomy when that episode was on, so I missed the Beatles on the Jack Parr Show. But I saw them on the Ed Sullivan Show, and as soon as I saw them on the screen, the words President Kennedy flashed through my mind, because it was only like 2 months after the JFK assassination. And in my house, we were still kind of in mourning about the whole thing, not over the shock of it yet. And the Beatles, when I saw them, they reminded me of President Kennedy. Like they carried themselves the way he did. Like he always, with him, it was always like, this is a guy who just has the world in his back pocket, and he's got this smile on his face, like, hey, it was something about, it was magical to see him, to me, when I was a kid. And then he was killed. But then, I don't know, I just saw like this, just for this quick instant, I saw like a physical resemblance between them and him. And
Mm-hmm.
I think that's a part of what, but you could dispute that because they made it in England before then, and there was no such issue at hand in England. But anyway, yeah, I loved them and grew up with them, and yeah, definitely. What was the question? I forgot.
We were talking about Beatlemania and what it was like
Oh
growing up
yeah.
in that area. Yeah, I was going to going back to your albums. What was it like? You get the first album out, and then you go to Field Day, your second album,
Yeah.
and was it easier to do the second album after that first album? Did you find the process easier?
Yes. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, like night and day, much easier. The
Mm-hmm.
first album was really, it was a real challenge. It was because there was so much pressure,
Mm-hmm.
really high expectations, because the press, like I said, in New York, the press had gone crazy over us. And uh, anyhow, after getting that experience under my belt, so to speak, I went in to do the second one, and it was just like, wow, here we are. Let's make another record. We've already done it before. We've proven that we can do it. So here we go. And it was much easier. It was like a party almost in the studio. And, we had such a good time, young guys, and, it was exciting and great.
I really like that song, Our Town.
Oh, thanks.
Yeah. Yeah, like I said, I listened to a bunch of your songs last night just to get caught up. And I listen to music a lot when I'm doing stuff on the computer, like um, whatever it is I'm doing. And I made last night a Marshall Crenshaw night. And I just listened through all kinds of your songs. And Our
Nice.
Town was one that stood out. I really enjoyed it. I loved the chorus of it, and that one stood out. Yeah,
Thank you.
yeah. You have a like this is probably again your upbringing, but people compare you to Buddy Holly and whatnot. You got a lot of similarities in terms of your sound. Was that deliberate?
Uh, well, it wasn't deliberate. It was more like just kind of natural.
Mm-hmm.
There's a difference between deliberate and natural, I guess. And
Oh, it
like I
sounds
said,
great. It sounds great.
thank you, thank
Yeah.
you. Yeah, no, like I said, I loved him when I was 4 years old, and
Mm-hmm.
the records just struck me as being really joyful and something really it stirred my imagination. He just had, I mean, he does have his own kind of sound, and his records were made in this little. I've been to the studio where the records were made, and it's just this little building on a highway in this little town out west. And the town, like in that part of like West Texas and New Mexico, like all the towns are really spread out from one another. Like you'll be in a town like Lubbock, Texas, and then to get to the next town, you might have to drive like 20 miles across nothingness. From Lubbock, Texas to Clovis, New Mexico. It's really like you're on one planet and then you go to the other planet. So Buddy Holly's sound, it just comes from this little isolated space, and then he took it out into the world. I don't know, something about that, all of that really, it sparked something in my mind when I was a little kid. It just sounded like it came from its own little realm. Still does sound like that.
Yeah.
But yeah, I loved him.
Right around this time too, you were involved in a film called Get Crazy, directed by
Oh,
I like that film. I love the movie Rock and Roll High School. And I
me too.
had Alan, yeah, I've interviewed um, a couple people from that movie, and one of them was Alan Arkish, the director. And
Mm.
I said to him, or I said, when is Get Crazy coming out on Blu-ray? And he was telling me, I've had him on here twice, and he goes, he doesn't think it's going to happen because of this, or this.
Yeah.
And I asked him
Oh,
again on the second album. Now it's coming out on Blu-ray, and I said to him on Facebook, I said, "I told you so."
oh, nice. Well, good for him. He's a really nice fellow. I haven't seen him in ages, but yeah, I really like his work a lot. I love Rock and Roll High School. I actually saw that at a drive-in movie
Oh,
theater.
nice. What?
Yeah, and anyhow, yeah, Alan's great, and I didn't have that much contact with him when Get Crazy was happening, but it was a situation where he requested specifically that I come up with a song for the soundtrack, and I don't even remember what song it is, but I think it was just something like a spare part kind of thing where I sent him a song. Now maybe I wish now that I had tried harder for whatever it was, but no, I really
I could
respect
bring it
him.
up here. You see, Get Crazy performer. It's only a movie,
Oh
aka But,
yeah, right.
and
Yeah, that's the song that I wrote for Robert Gordon, or not.
yeah,
I didn't write it for him, but have you heard of Robert Gordon?
I have not. No.
Oh, okay. Well, he was a recording artist um, back in the late '70s, early '80s. He was a rockabilly singer that got onto a
Mhm.
major got onto RCA Records, and he was the first recording artist that did any of my songs.
Okay.
Robert Gordon really gave me like a break in the beginning. Him and Richard Goddard, and so anyway, that song that's in Get Crazy was my demo of a song that Robert Gordon did on one of his albums. Like I said, it was just sort of a cast off. But I'm glad Alan is still out there,
Oh
out and
yeah.
around. Tell him if you ever talk to him again. Tell him I said hey.
I'm gonna be
Oh,
reaching out to him to have him on again because I gotta have a word with him about didn't you say Get Crazy wasn't coming out on Blu-ray? I'm ordering it. I got it on order right now. So
Yeah.
I'm glad it's coming out. It's a fun movie. It's a play a great double billing with Rock and Roll High School easily, you know. And where Rock and Roll High School had PJ Souls as Riff Randall, big Ramones fan, and
The Ramones. Oh my
love the
God.
Ramones. Yeah. Well,
Uh,
Get Crazy to be the one that stands out is Malcolm McDowell.
oh, that's right. Yeah.
Has a
Well,
conversation with his growing area in the bathroom. His character's so high, and I'm like, you know what? I'm enjoying this, and he put a lot of energy and enthusiasm in it. So, yeah, I had to bring that film up. I like that film, and of course, you did a song for Empire Records as well.
oh well, that's a different story. That was huge. That one.
I
That
like
was
that movie.
with the movie. I've never even seen the movie, but it was a song that I co-wrote with the Gin Blossoms at
Hmm.
their request, and it came out and was like it blew up immediately. I
Uh,
wrote I wrote the music with one of the guys in the band, Jesse Valenzuela,
mhm.
and then the singer Robin Wilson. He wrote the lyrics. I think he wrote the lyrics at the recording session for the song, and then I didn't meet him until after the song was already in the charts. So it was an instant smash hit. I'll never forget that.
My sister-in-law loves that movie. Most of the movies she likes really,
Yeah,
really suck. Finally, she got one that was actually really good. And I'd never heard,
yeah.
yeah, I had never seen it until last year. And finally, I was looking up on it because, like I said, from my vantage point, she's got horrible taste in movies, and I
Yeah.
grill her on it. But I looked up the trailer and some scenes on YouTube from it, and I was like, this looks like it might be something I might be interested in. So I took a gamble and ordered it. And yeah, I really enjoyed it,
It's
especially
still
that whole,
popular.
oh
It's still
yeah,
got like a cult thing to it, and I know the soundtrack album is really good.
yes, Lev
Mhm.
Tyler in it as well. And yeah.
Oh,
Hmm. So yeah, I had to bring that up. And of course, 1985, you got your next album, Blues is King. You want to do that was of course Downtown. Um, did you want to do something different with this album? Was that your intention?
well, that one, it was like a supposed to be like a peacemaking album with Warner Brothers, actually. Warner Brothers Records.
Uh-huh.
After my second album, I just thought, boy, this has turned into a giant mess, and I wasn't happy, and nobody was. It was like, this, where do we all go wrong here? And I mean, now I remember everything about that time period, and I know everything about it, and I can, you know, I get why things happen the way that they did. But after my second album, I asked for a meeting with like the two main principals at the label, the president and like the other president.
Yeah.
I had this meeting with them, and I begged them to drop me from the label and let me go. And I didn't even know what I was going to do after that. It wasn't like, oh, I wanted to get out so I could get on another label. I could have in 2 minutes, but that wasn't even in my mind. I was just thinking it'd be better if we all just sort of said thanks and moved on. But they wouldn't hear of it, So Downtown was like, okay, how can we figure out how can we do something that'll make us all happy? Because
Yeah.
they thought that Field Day was radical. My second album,
Hmm.
they thought that it was edgy and radical, and which is crazy to because it really wasn't. It was just a good rock and roll record. But
Hmm.
anyway, Downtown. I mean, but the other thing was, I mean, I never made the same record twice anyway. Every
Uh-huh.
time, if you look at all my records, there's always, I'm moving on constantly. I'm always on a forward going path. So when Downtown came around, just the atmosphere surrounding it was one thing, but also I was just into maybe, just things that I hadn't been into when I did the first two, just learning and got my radar up all the time. Downtown has a little sort of like a country rock thing to it, partly because of what I was listening to. My own album, Downtown wasn't a hit, but there was a track on it where I, I, I covered a song that I got from Gene Vincent. Ever hear Gene Vincent?
No, I haven't.
Gene Vincent was, like a contemporary of Eddie Cochran and Carl Perkins, and
Okay.
Gene Vincent had hit records in the 50s. He was a rockabilly singer. And I took a song that I'd heard from him, one called Right Now. That's on my Downtown album.
Hmm.
But, what I did with the Gene Vincent thing was I did a kind of a song doctor thing to it, where I punched up the lyrics and made the lyrics a little stronger, I thought, a little more cohesive. And I recorded it on my album Downtown. And then about a year later, a singer named Mary Chapin Carpenter covered my version of Right Now. She did all the lyric changes that I did, copied my arrangement of it. And but the dumb thing was, like when I made those changes to the song, some people around me said, well, maybe you should see if you can get a piece of the song, get a third credit on it, because you changed the song. And I thought, no, I don't want to be, greedy. I'm not Led Zeppelin. I'm not going to I don't want to put my name on somebody else's song. So I didn't do it. But then, she had a hit with my version of it. And then I thought, well, then I should have done it. I should have seen it. I should have checked to see if I could get credit on it, because now it's a hit by somebody else. But I guess what I'm trying to say is that my record, it was like part of a zeitgeist of the moment anyway. And, I always had the situation where other artists and other songwriters and musicians and record makers were listening to my stuff
Hmm.
and picking up on it, which is great. I'm flattered that she heard my record and decided to make one of the songs into a big hit. I'm only sorry that I was too stupid to see if I could get a piece of the song. But anyhow, that was Downtown. It was kind of a fraught atmosphere behind the scenes with that album for me.
You
So
mentioned
go ahead.
what?
Go ahead.
I was gonna say, you mentioned that Warner Brothers found Field Day too edgy. What's wrong with that though? I mean, the album's great.
It is. I don't know. Maybe it was 2 years ahead of its time or something. I think it was. I think it was like at least 2 years ahead of its time.
Well, if you're trying to do something different with each album, that's good, because it's nothing worse than hearing the same thing over and over. So if you're progressing, they should be thankful.
Sure, it just didn't work out. That's all. I mean, I'm not blaming anybody. Well, I could, but I'm not blaming anybody, any more than I'm blaming myself, I guess. And who cares anyway? Because my life turned out great. So
Hmm.
yeah.
Yeah. Well,
Oh, it's almost an hour now.
it's
But
almost an hour.
yeah,
You want to sign off? I'll let you
yeah,
sign.
I do have to go because I got another one of these kind of coming up soon. So this might be a good time
You
if you
know
don't
what?
mind.
That's fine. I didn't have much else to go on anyway. I just going to mention some of the soundtracks you did and stuff like that. But
Yeah.
yeah, like Desperately Seeking Susan and movies like that. You've had
Oh
songs
yeah.
on. Yep.
Yeah.
But
The movies have really been good to me, and I think that's the reason. Huge part of the reason why I've had longevity is because of the movies. Honestly, so I'm glad that you're focusing on that.
yeah,
That's really a crucial thing with me.
Well, you know what? I enjoyed listening to your music last night too. Like I didn't want to focus just on Peggy Sue Got Married. In fact, it wasn't the last I found out you wrote Walk Hard, the
Yeah.
song to that. Like I said, I love that movie, and Get
Hmm.
Crazy or I'm currently got that on order. So I'll bring you up next time I speak to Alan Arkish. In fact, I might even
Please
tag,
do.
yeah, I might even tag him when I post this on Facebook. So,
Hmm.
but
Great. He's a cool
before,
guy.
yeah, before I let you go, would you mind doing a plug for my show?
Not at all. What do you want me to say?
Just state your name and say you're listening to Greg Gilbert on Python's Paradise.
Okay.
Go
Hi,
for it.
folks. Hi, folks. It's Marshall Crenshaw, and you're listening to Greg Gilbert on Python's Paradise.
Yes. And over 35 years ago, Peggy Sue got married, and this guy was on the stage and witnessed it all. God
Absolutely.
bless you, Marshall. Thank you for allowing me the honor today.
Thank you, Greg. Thanks for reaching out, and hope maybe I'll see you sometime in the Atlantic time zone.
I hope so. That would be wonderful.
All right. Bye now.
Take care.